Hello, I'm Diego Navarro, and I'm an instructor at Cabrillo College in Watsonville. And I might speak a little fast here. My mother's from Brooklyn, even though I was raised in California, and so she talked with her hands, and she spoke very fast. And I was just thinking last night, this program that I designed was for my mom because she didn't ever graduate from high school, and she was afraid of education. And so I just wanted to mention that. She died when I was 15, and I was just thinking about that last night. So the focus of my project, the Academy for College Excellence, is adults. And it's adults that have gone to school before and may not have had good experiences of it. It's a community college-based program, and it's for adults that are not prepared for college, and many of them are injured by their academic experiences before that, because being unprepared for college means that they weren't successful. So usually they didn't have all the rewards for being successful in school, like many of the teachers that teach at our college. So what we're focused on is reclaiming the excitement for learning in an academic environment. And so this program started in terms of the implementation in Watsonville, which is 80% Latino, in February of 2002. And we have underperforming high schools in Watsonville. We have violence and gangs in the neighborhoods in Watsonville, and we have high poverty rates there. The program currently is in Oakland, Berkeley. It's in other cities outside of Philadelphia, Chester, if you know Chester at all. And so I'm going to show a few videos. It's going to talk about the Digital Bridge Academy, which was the name of it back in 2002. We just changed the name about a year ago. So after the setup, I'm going to go into 5 design categories that you might want to look at if you're going to scale and create a sustainable program. So this photo is of some students that were in the initial pilot that we did in June of 2002. It was with the Youth Build group. How many people know about Youth Build? Okay, students that didn't do well in school, many of them were in probation or adjudicated life before going into Youth Build. And so we did this pilot in June of 2002. And what I found as we started this program was that there's a motto we have, and that is, we need university halls rather than prison walls. And we spend $35,000 a year for incarcerating people when we only pay $4,500 for students to go to community college. And we think we need to change that such that we have more students that are going to community college and not building prisons for these students. So in an early pilot that we had, I was told that we were going to have 50% attrition by the people that were asking me what we were going to do in the program. It was a 40-hour pilot. And so I was sitting in that pilot, sitting in the room, and the students came in, and a lot of them sat there with their heads back, looking at the ceiling, and just had kind of an attitude, and I'd go around the room and I'd say, well, you're not going to be here, and you're not going to be here in my mind. And at the end of the week, on Thursday, the 4th day of the pilot, we came in after the break in the afternoon, and one of the leaders, he was an ex-gang member and played soccer really well, and a lot of people liked him. He stood up on a chair. He said, is tomorrow the last day? And we said, yeah. And he stood up on the chair and he said, we don't want this to end. And we had 100% completion at the end of that week, and the students asked us if they could come back to have another day. And we realized that if you develop a relevant educational model, it actually will meet the needs of students, and they'll want to participate. So what we found is that students need to believe in themselves again because of their educational experience and other life experiences. So I'm going to show you a video. Because the industrialized educational model that we have in community colleges today doesn't necessarily meet the needs of high-risk students.
I dealt with teachers saying that I wasn't as smart as I thought I was.
The Digital Bridge Academy is teaching kids to believe in themselves.
We help these students learn a way of being that they can use in their neighborhoods, in their families, and it transforms them.
It's nothing like school. It's nothing like do your work, and the teacher gives you an assignment. The teacher's asking you what you're thinking and how you feel about this.
You have fun, at the same time, you learn a lot.
It's like all fun because we know each other. I mean, it's really different. It's like, I don't know, makes you feel more human, more alive.
You can't wait till you come to class the next day.
It's like a once-in-a-lifetime chance that you're not going to experience anywhere else.
You have the chance, take it.
It teaches you that the only thing holding you back from greatness is you.
So one of the things that we do is that we empower the students to dream about their futures and to find themselves. Many of them were told lies about who they were. I had this one student named Steve in our first pilot. he was really good with computers. He was doing embedded programming with these robots we had. So I asked him after class, I said, you know, are you going to go to Cabrillo? He said, I can't go to college. And I said, why not? He said, I have dyslexia. Well, this is like, I hadn't been teaching before that. I handed him a paragraph and asked him to read it to me, and he read it pretty well. And I said, how do you know you have dyslexia? He said, my second grade teacher told me I had dyslexia. I asked him if he'd ever been tested for it. He said, no. So many of these students have lies about who they really are. And so they need to get to know themselves. And I'm going to show you another video that talks about that. What I'm finding with these students is that they've had a reflection of themselves that isn't really who they are, and they believe the story.
Our society and the way everything works today, we don't empower students.
There was no help. And a lot of kids come into any institution thinking that.
They do not understand their own capabilities. So the program that we're designing is to help them open up to what that is inside of them.
They would ask in high school, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? I just had no clue. I was just lost.
Before entering this program, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know really what type of person I was.
It gives you a better understanding of yourself.
You get to know who you really are.
It's not only things that you can apply educationally, but also to your life.
They gave me the blueprints to improve myself. I just have to do the implementing.
One of the things that we found is that these students have huge strengths in persistence and survival. The kinds of complex lives they live are harrowing in many places. And they live and they survive and they persist. But when they get in an academic environment, they totally melt. And so one of the things we do is we help them translate those strengths of persistence into an academic environment by helping them see the culture and learn about it to be successful in it. This idea came back in 1999. And it was about how do we help community colleges create community? And we had 4 skills we were looking at. One was purpose. So how do we help students get in touch with purpose in their lives? Since they're supposed to go through, what, 5 or 10 careers in their lifetime, they need to get in touch with purpose. Second is self-discipline. A lot of our students come in without the behaviors needed for being successful in school and at least college. The third is collaborative leadership skills, because if you're going to be effective in life, many of the careers that have a future require collaborative leadership skills, and then academics was the 4th. So one of the questions I would ask is, how would you design a program like this? So one of the first things that we need to do is you have to design constraints. What are the design constraints that you have? If you're going to design for scalability and also for sustainability, you need to do that from the beginning. And so the first is you have to figure out what your design center is. And for us, there's 1,200 community colleges in the United States. And our program couldn't cost more than what's regularly being done, because if it costs more, it won't scale. Another design constraint is that we have to deal with changing institutions that already exist. It's not about starting a new charter school or a new charter college. It's about going into existing institutions. How do you change those institutions? And then how do you build the capacity for students to transform themselves to a college-level learners? So this next video talks about that. And the one that's here is Celia.
Before I came to this program, I was ready to give up.
But now coming here, I know that I can do anything I wanted to.
Everything is different to me now. I see everything in a different way.
I thought I was gonna get just like a 2-year degree. Now I wanna go to the university and become a pediatrician.
I have dreams of, owning my own house, providing for my daughter, the best future I could provide for her.
Now, I know I'm capable of learning.
I think everyone's been changed in some way in that class.
It's really helping because it showed me I'm not alone. There's people out there that actually want to see you succeed.
I really have the right tools to do my job and what I have to do or what I want to do.
The Academy's taught me that it's not impossible. Anybody could get anything you want in life.
And now I'm able to really express how I feel, because I have the skills now to do it and the confidence.
With this program, there's nothing I can't do. There's nothing that's going to stop me. So.
So our first design constraint was community colleges. The second is, how do you figure out who to serve? There are 10 million community college students in the United States, of which 4.2 million are developmental ed students. That means students that aren't prepared for college. 75% of those students will never go on to completing their degree. 75% of them. That rate is increasing. 60% of all incoming community college students nationwide go into developmental education. So it's a huge problem that we have in the system. And so, and it doesn't include the unemployed 18 to 26-year-olds. So if you go to Oakland, you go into San Francisco, there's a lot more students that are 18 to 26-year-old that are unemployed that are not going to community college. So how do we build a college environment that will help those students transition to being successful in a college environment? So the question is transformation. The third idea around constraints is to really have a keen interest and experience and knowledge around something that you're doing. My story is that I came from a place called Pomona. How many of you know about Pomona? It's not Pomona College, because that was in Claremont. I went to Pomona High School, Palmar's junior high school. It was a very violent place. They'd shut down the high schools every year for at least a week because we'd have a lot of gang fights that were going on. My mom died in 9th grade of painful disease, bone cancer. I was on the streets my high school years, and when I graduated from high school, I couldn't read and write at college level. And I went on to Pasadena City College, which helped transform me into an effective college student. And I find that one of the things is if you know the students you're working with, it really helps a lot. But really, if you're interested and you're keenly aware and observing, that will help as well. So the next thing in terms of design ideas, besides design constraints, is to listen deeply. Listen deeply to identify core needs and problems. And there's 3 ideas around this. The first one is that we found was that our students are very smart. These students are extremely smart. It's just that they have a lot of behaviors and they have a lot of self-identity issues that don't see them as college-bound because the counselors never tracked them to college. When I graduated from high school, I had never met with a counselor in my high school because they never thought that I could make it. Also, they need a fire relit. I find that our students, the ones that we work with, have PhDs. They have PhDs in social injustice because they really understand that. And if you develop an educational model focused on social justice, you're bringing strengths into the classroom. And if you teach them primary research, then they become knowledge creators. What we're doing in graduate school should be what we do the first semester for these students in college. It's primary research that's in an environment where they learn how to create knowledge. So this next one is a woman, Sophia. And she wanted more from her college experience, but she had a traumatic childhood background.
When the first 2 weeks were done, I had no doubt that I could accomplish my goals of becoming a nurse. I wanted to first start as a medical assistant, and then I wanted to become a nurse. And I can't even express to you guys like just the desire that he had lit in me, just to want to learn, to want to continue. Like, wow, I can do this. You know, the grass is starting to look greener. For me, every time, like, the grass would look greener on the other side, you know, that saying. Well, that's how I've always felt, you know, especially from my background of what I had seen, you know. I would be envious about other people, you know, like, oh, I want to be like them, I want to be like them. Well, now I'm, like, so excited to be me, you know. It's like, oh, you know, here I am young, I'm still young, I'm trying to do this goal, I'm trying to accomplish it, and I feel like
I can, is what she says. So in listening deeply, understanding the core needs and problems, the first is to figure out the core need. And it's that these students are really smart, and they can make it. You just have to figure out how to do it. The second is that you've got to examine definitions. And last night, Dr. Mitra was talking about what he called remoteness. He had defined what remoteness was. For us, our definition had to do with at risk. Is that when I interviewed educators, they talked about at risk as students that spoke a second language, came from poverty. But when I talked to probation officers and social workers, they talked about homeless youth, they talked about foster care youth, they talked about adjudicated youth. And what educators were doing, they were focusing on a group, they were pulling their hair out and missing this whole other population that's much bigger and that's growing over time because many of these students don't graduate from high school. So we had to figure out what at-risk meant. And so that was the second area, is definitions. You've got to figure out what definitions don't fit. And then the third is to identify the core problems. So how many of you remember the commercials where they said if you do drugs and they break an egg and they put it in a frying pan and it fries, your brain turns into a fried egg? How many of you remember that commercial? You know, my students come in thinking their lives are over because their brains are fried, okay? Because that's the message that they get. The other thing is, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Stanford has done a study on violence. They were, in the last year they published it, where they were looking at returning Iraqi veterans that were coming back from combat veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. They developed a trauma index. Well, they applied that trauma index to high school students in urban environments. And you know what they found? that the high school students have 6 times the trauma of returning combat veterans. What does that mean for education? What does that mean for us in the classroom? 80% of community colleges live in urban environments. Okay? So we have to look at how is the brain affected by trauma? How is the brain affected by violence? And so one of the things, luckily, that's happening is that there is research that's been going on in brain plasticity that's been published in the last 3 or 4 years, where they're starting to figure out this thing called neurogenesis and synaptic genesis, which is the rewiring of the brain and the neurological system. It takes about 9 to 14 weeks. A semester is an ideal laboratory. And so the core problem that we need to be looking at is how do we design curriculum to rewire the brain so that we use the semester to do it well. And I think that's the core problem that we go after, and we've developed curriculum to do that, and I think that's why we've been successful in what we're doing. So thank you very much.